Very contentious film now, I think. Now almost equally or more reviled than Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. If it is more reviled now, or seems so, it is because, I assume, Gone with the Wind had been canonised for nearly a century, whereas Birth of a Nation had, almost from the moment of its release, been begrudgingly so. Obviously, The Birth of a Nation is much more aggressively hateful and bigoted than Gone with the Wind, though even at the time of its release, when America as a whole was far more racially insensitive and politically unequal, a film which celebrated a seditious cause which enabled the deaths of countless young men was not an easy notion for many an American patriot to stomach. Gone with the Wind sooner portrayed the South as aggressors and fighting to maintain a slave based hegemony and economy which bolstered a callous hierarchy. Still, the depiction of the African slaves as cartoonish as caricatures, the portrayal of the Southern aristocracy as ignorant and more set in their right ways than ruthless or cruel, a generally sympathetic disposition, though not entirely supportive of, toward the Old South is maintained throughout Gone with the Wind's extravagant runtime, especially where the second part, the Reconstruction era, is concerned. A brief trend in American history at that time, this belief that the Confederacy had a noble cause and was cruelly treated in the aftermath of their defeat, strangely persisted in the United States during the early 20th century, plausibly or undeniably in part due to Griffith's aforementioned 1915 film. How this was consistent with a belief in the American Constitution, admiration for Abraham Lincoln, or a belief that the Civil War was an unnecessary tragedy, clearly on record as having been instigated by the Confederate South, I just don't know. But aside from all of this, though that is important and not worth ignoring, I think, how is the film itself? If The Birth of a Nation is a film which emanates as a filmic accomplishment in spite of its own visceral evil, how does Gone with the Wind fare? A film which is, really all things considered, rather less evil in its conscious motivations. Gone with the Wind is actually, I would claim, a far less interesting film production than Griffith's The Birth of a Nation, more reliant on technicolor spectacle, and it is or can be fairly spectacular, and the chemistry of its cast when employing the more photographic qualities of the medium itself. The camera is mostly stagnant, the editing schema is unassertive, there is much spending on maximizing cinema technology, then modern production values at their height, without employing any little overt technical creativity or risky experimentation beyond what audiences predicted, just, as I said, totally maximized. I first viewed the film at 12 or 13, and I remember being rather impressed with it then. I had rarely sat through a film of such scope, such a multiple weeknight runtime at that, and I found it exciting, engaging, and a fascinating exploration of a history that I then knew very little about. The characters are all, inarguably, memorable. They have stood the test of time in American cultural history. Everyone knows Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler. Some will know Ashley and Melanie Pitt. Even Mammy was extremely memorable for one reason or another. There are a great many memorable scenes. I don't know if is or was just my age, but I remembered much of the film despite not having seen it for quite some time. I am unsure if I had seen the film since that time before rewatching it for this program. Plausibly, I saw snippets of it again on daytime weekend or school holiday television, as many would have, I can assume. Like 1959's Ben Hur, released 10 years after the similar Academy Award fanfare, it was a film I lost favour for as I grew into an adult, despite seeing it early in my adolescence, yet couldn't deny remembering the film really very well. This is an accomplishment in and of itself, or maybe I just have a good memory, I do not know, maybe both perhaps. I wouldn't place it on a short list of the greatest films of all time, American or otherwise, although anyone who would like to see it may as well. If it seems appealing, there is certainly something that one might find compelling about it. In terms of the spectacle, the narrative, the performances, or the historical period recreation, Gone with the Wind has some enduring appeal, which, considering the insensitivities which abound throughout that intimidating runtime, is genuinely impressive.